every single person has a different understanding of things. They have a different belief, a different culture, a different relationship to that thing.
What I found is that there's a direct correlation too with different cultures when there is low risk appetite, meaning there's high risk aversion. They try to avoid risk. They don't try things, so they never prove to themselves that they're capable.
Welcome to Evolve Ventures, the one place where leaders like you can dependably go to shift your consciousness to unlimited potential. I'm your host, Bianca Thomas.
And I'm your host, Emilia Smith. Welcome back to another episode 107, the pros and cons of getting clear on your team's culture. If you have not already listened to our last episode 106, the difference in a fixed mindset versus growth, dig back into that episode and dive into the story, get in there, saddle up, giddy up. And I will say that so that you know, if those of you who have listened to it, what I mean by that. So quick disclosure out there, as podcasters, it is very challenging to make sure that your technology is up to speed. But I want to put out there and apologize in advance to our listeners, because we are definitely used to higher quality in terms of audio than we currently will have today. My mic just crapped the bed, so we will be going off of the mic that we have. But with that being said, thank you for tuning in, despite the audio quality being less than ideal and certainly less than our personal standards. But as entrepreneurs, as women, as leaders, we know it's important to fail forward, and we want to make sure that we demonstrate that while simultaneously making sure that we can add value despite that. So let's jump in. Bianca, let's get into the story of today.
Let us get into it. So this entire month, the theme for this month is all about culture. And to get us started and to start us into this episode, I wanted to bring a story forward that doesn't really seem like it would fit the mold, but bear with me and you'll get it. So last month, the theme, or it might've been 2 months ago. Last month, 2 months ago. I don't know what day it is, clearly. 2 months ago, the theme for the month was evolved fitness and well-being. And what as a team we wanted to do was we wanted to bring forward to the community a fitness challenge. And so we decided that to get this started, we wanted to get we wanted to get input from the whole team and meet so we can all kind of rumble together and have a conversation about what we want to put in this Evolve Fitness Challenge. So Emilia wasn't in the meeting. I led the meeting because I'm the one that came up with it, and she had to do something that day. And so I met with the other 5 people on the team. So it was me and the 5 of them. And I go into this meeting, I'm so excited. I love fitness. For anyone who knows me, I am a fitness fanatic. I've been in the gym since I was 16. So I have a very long history and a long background in a certain type of athletics and fitness, right? Powerlifting background, bodybuilding background. So very, very bro-esque, I guess, type lifting, and just that type of mentality. So we go into this meeting and I'm like, yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be fine. It's going to be like a 30-45 minute meeting. We're going to meet with the team. I'm going to let them know my game plan. I'm just going to get some feedback from them, and it's going to be fine. It's going to be a really simple conversation. And you can probably tell by the way that I'm explaining this story that was not the case. So we get into this meeting, we get started, and I start mentioning to them the 6 criteria that I believe we should have everybody measure. Emilia and I, you hear us talk about it all the time. We're very structured in our day-to-day life. And we both and the entire team use a measuring system to basically track our daily productivity every single day based on set criteria that we've determined for ourselves. It sounds really complex, but basically we give ourselves a 1 or a 0 if we did or did not do the thing we said we're going to do. So I'm like, okay, this is a very simple tool that we can help people utilize to just track, did I do this fitness thing that I said I was going to do today, or did I not? So I bring this forward to the team. I say, okay, here's the 6 criteria that I think we should do. We're going to have everyone count macros. We're going to have everyone drink 64 ounces of water a day. Everyone's going to stretch every day. And there was a few other ones, and off the top of my head, I can't remember. But there was like dead silence for a minute. And then it felt like all of a sudden just chaos erupted. And in my head, this is what it felt like. Probably not the case, but you know, when you're triggered, that's what it feels like. So we're all having this conversation and none of us are really agreeing on what to have this fitness challenge include. Now, what I have come to understand and what kind of brought about the theme for this episode and the topic is I went into that meeting not realizing and not remembering that every single person on that team has their own background, their own history, their own experiences, their own relationship with fitness that was brought about by the culture and the environments and basically the life that they have had. I went into that meeting assuming my way is the best way to go about doing it. And because I had a longer history in fitness than they did, or at least just a longer, I guess, direct relationship, like for lack of a better phrase, I don't know how else to explain it. I went in with the assumption that my way was the same way that they would have went about doing it. And looking back, that was the absolute wrong decision. Like I was totally wrong for that. But it led Emilia and I to really rumble with each other and then kind of have this rumbling or really just intimate and effective but challenging dialogue with the team of why couldn't we agree on this? What were the challenges? What was making it so difficult for all of us to just come together and decide on this? And this is where the theme and the topic of this episode comes into play. It would have been so easy for me to just go in there, hear the challenges that they were having and say, I see what you're saying, but I'm the leader and we're going to do it my way because, you know, I'm the leader and I'm in charge and what I say goes. It would have been so easy to do that. It would have made my life so much easier. It would have gotten the fitness challenge out a lot sooner, but it would have completely broken the trust with the team. And Emilia and I, in what we're doing, we care about that so much more. And I'll let Emilia talk about this specific fact, but Emilia and I built our team with the understanding that we want a very culturally diverse team. We want a neurodiverse team. And we want our team to feel like who they are with their own background, with their understanding is enough and is wanted and is welcome.
So there's so many things in that story, B, that I want to dive into, but I'll try to like kind of string all of these little golden nuggets together, hopefully in a way that's valuable to our listeners. So one of the things that I think that it's indirectly related to team culture. We can't talk about team culture from my perspective without talking about leadership. And when it comes to any sort of real culture, like from my perspective, it's and this, I'm speaking from more of like a business perspective, right? But this is also just any sort of team, team culture, whether you're an athlete, whether you're a student, whether you're in a choir group or a church group, right? You want to have momentum. Now, momentum is a physics term, but it's far more than that. What it means is really to continuously move forward and have acceleration towards the things, towards the values, towards the meaning to which you aspire to achieve, right? So like the things that you care about in plain, simple terms, you want to have progress towards that. And when people get so caught up in what their personal belief systems are and their thoughts and their ways of doing things, when they get so stuck in the mud of what that is, it makes it very, very hard for any sort of momentum to be had, especially when you're working alongside others, right? There's a quote, and I remember it's an old African adage, and I might butcher it, but it's, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to have success, go together, or something like that.
If you want to go far, go together.
If you want to go far, go together. Yes, thank you. So from my perspective as a leader, as a woman, as the person that I aspire to be, I am focused on the long term. I'm focused on, going that distance. And so togetherness, collaboration is absolutely fundamental to today, right? If you don't have that today, good luck on going far. And trust me, I've tried the path of going fast. And it's funny because I was actually just scrolling, I'll do an Instagram post soon on this about a drone business that I had. And I had success. Trust me, it was awesome. I got so much success in that. But, I didn't have all the beautiful, incredible benefits that came with having a team and having and experiencing the pros and cons of team culture, right? The momentum was something that I ignited really quick because it was just me, but there's so many downsides of that. So to circle this back to our team, it started just as an idea, right? Bianca, your idea, let's have a fitness challenge. Awesome. All of our team is interested in fitness, or so we thought. Yet fitness looked different on each one of us. And getting stuck, putting blinders on as to what our definition of fitness was, didn't enable us to really understand and see at first what our team's culture was, meaning what was the meaning that they've assigned to fitness in general, right? So one of the cons of getting clear, quote unquote, on your team's culture is the perception that you have clarity. The perception can cause you to jump to assumptions. Like, for example, when Bianca said, I'm going to go into this meeting, we're going to get through this and it's going to be so fast. We're going to get some quick input. They're going to be all on board. Awesome. This caused isolation for each one of the team members, hence why they each went silent, right? Crickets. When you share your belief system and you assume that it's everyone else's, because this is what our team is, right? This is what we've attracted because of what we value. Crickets. And then you have that awkward experience where how do you step forward and share what you value, what your experiences are? And especially in the case where it's going to be different from the person that's leading the meeting. That is scary shit. Like, we've all been there where we kind of stepped outside of our comfort zone and known that we might not be liked here. We might not be celebrated, respected, or admired for what I believe in this instance. And so one of the pros, right, talking about pros and cons of getting clear on the culture in this experience was you have and can get closer to clarity when you start to create opportunities for culture to be thriving, to have experiences, to have engagement, right? If you think about that one meeting, it was all different cultures from each one of our team members colliding. That space, that opportunity to ask for input, though you didn't think it would go the way that it did, that offered an opportunity to get the pros of what we call getting clear on the culture, which is getting clear. And though that might cause some isolation because of the downside of that, it can then bring you to a deeper sense of belonging as a team. And one of the things too, B, when you like reached out to me, I think what it helped put into sharp focus for me when I was on the other end. So for our listeners, for context, so I was actually on a leadership retreat at that time with Alan, and Bianca and I had actually jumped on the phone the day before because I wanted to understand what her goal was. What did we want to build this out? How did it look? What was her thoughts? How much did she actually really build this out from her brain to the technical infrastructure that we need as a team?
It was none. I just want to mention it was none.
And I soon found that out. And so part of it was, okay, understanding even like each one of our limitations and each one of our competencies, that's so important to get clear on. And that helped me get clarity on where I can help be and where I can kind of step forward or step back, because some of the lessons that we learn are when we take a step back and listen and see how things happen, right? Obviously not to the detriment of everything breaking up, but I'll tell you that night after Bianca had a call with the team, and the team knows this because I said this, I was freaking out. I was like, we just onboarded a ton of team members, right? It is quite the cluster F of cultures because we value neurodiversity. One of our core values as a team is evolution of and towards excellence. When you put that out there and you have, then your second one is proactive neurodiversity. You have people coming from all corners of the earth trying to get their points, their beliefs, their experiences across. Why? Because they too value that evolution towards excellence. But it does not feel that way when you're in a room talking about your own experiences and you realize you've never been able to do that on your own accord without being guilt, blamed, shamed, or criticized for. And this was that one room where our team, I learned, had a moment to actually have that, what we call the rumble, shout out to Brene Brown, to actually share what your experience is, what you valued, and what fitness in that essence mean to you. And through that dialogue, the team learned each other.
Not only what fitness means, but what excellence means. So to your point,
Truth.
Two of our core values as a company, as a brand, neurodiversity and striving to excellence. Those two concepts seem very different, and they can be, which is why it's both a pro and a con. It's a con in the short term because it genuinely would have been so much easier for me to just say, this is how we're going to do it, because my idea of excellence is the right one, right? But that completely negates our second core value, which is understanding that every single person has a different understanding of things. They have a different belief, a different culture, a different relationship to that thing. And I would have completely ostracized them had I not had the humility in that moment and the courage to hear their side and to hear their beliefs about it versus mine. And that's a pro. It's like wanting this change, right? Wanting to understand, wanting everyone to feel safe, seen, heard, and understood. It is a beautiful thing, and it is such a pro from a leadership perspective in the long term, but the short term, it can seem like it's making things harder, which is why, unfortunately, a lot of leaders won't do it. They do take that stance of, well, I'm the leader and what I say goes, or take it not from the aspect of a team, right? Or like a business. What about like an athletics team?
Yeah.
What about in any relationship? You are I'm going to give you this credit. You're a relationship expert. You and Alan genuinely have the best relationship I have ever seen, ever. Like no one has a relationship the way that they do. The two of them came from seemingly different cultures, very seemingly different backgrounds and understandings of the world. What would have happened if they didn't try to learn about each other's culture, to learn about each other's differences, to learn about just each other as individuals? It would have been easy in the short term to just not have to think about all of that. But they wouldn't have the relationship that they did had they not collaborated and connected and learned about each other's backgrounds and pains and love and dreams and desires and all of these things. There are a lot of seemingly cons about understanding the background of the people that you're around, but it's actually hurting you more by not doing that. Now, another con is that you kind of have to check yourself when people start telling you about their background, their cultures, their understanding, because you're coming into this conversation with your inherent beliefs and your values and your understanding of the world. And it can be very challenging when someone is opposing you on that. And you have to check your own ego and understand within yourself, this person has a different background, different history, different understanding than mine. And I have to be open to listening, because otherwise chaos will ensue.
Yeah, I remember. So one of the things that we did when we onboarded our team, which I know that, well, I know this because I work with businesses and I see this all over. When people are onboarded, oftentimes this is the business's values. These are our goals, et cetera. Here's all your clarity right up front. Now, this episode is about getting clear. It's not about clarity itself. Getting clear, getting is the key word that I would want to point out, because the getting includes the team. The culture is made up of your people. And to that last sentiment that you made, like, this is huge. We started asking our team members, what do they value? What do they believe? And what are their biggest aspirations? We have an exercise that I made called the GPS that gets you clear on your top 3 core values, your top 3 core beliefs, and your top 3 core aspirations. And we're not saying these are the locked in solid ones that you will have forever for the rest of your life. We just wanted to understand as leaders. If you're a part of this team and if you're drawn in, we're committed to always learning you. And we hope that that's something that we can inspire you through our actions to do with us as well, because it's not a one-way street when it comes to teams. Teams culture is reciprocal. The team contributes to it. You contribute to the team. And yes, that's based off of what you value, but to that momentum part, to the listening about, getting clear. The challenge is when you get a group of people together, you start to realize that each one of them, based on their culture and what they value, what they believe, what their aspirations are, they each have a different risk tolerance. And I want to talk about risks specifically in this because of the fact that one of the biggest warning signs, and I wanted to bring this in here with people, is when you have a culture, aka a team, whether it be, again, athletics, academics, business, choir, whatever, that has a low risk-taking culture, momentum will be stopped.
Before you go into that, can you explain what you mean by risk tolerance?
Yes.
You and I might understand that, but I don't think a lot of people really understand that concept.
Thanks, B. Yeah, I appreciate that. So risk tolerance for our listeners is someone who is, so there's think about pain tolerance. The easiest way I can explain it is pain tolerance. So when you step into the shower, let's say, for example, you turn up the nozzle and there's only a certain threshold to which you can feel like this is good heat for you. If you turn up that nozzle more and more heat, you start to be like, it's burning hot. And you either get out of the way, direct the shower head elsewhere, or you literally step out of the shower, or you turn it right off. And then you might go all the way down to cold and you're like, that's too cold. So you try to find a perfect temperature in the shower that like feels good for you, right? So I want you to keep in mind, each person who's listening, when I talk about risk tolerance, there's a perfect feel good point that you have as a person, as an individual, when it comes to risk taking. So there's a concept called people who are risk averse are people who try to avoid that too hot temperature in life, and the too cold temperature in life. So like
the Goldilocks metaphor.
Yes, exactly. You want to stay in what we call homeostasis. You don't want to take big risks. So like if you have a high risk aversion, you're likely not going to be an entrepreneur. You want to be a part of a team. You want to either have a very safe, certain, secure 9 to 5, right? Being an entrepreneur and having complete no awareness of where your next paycheck is going to come from, who you're going to impact, the love that you're going to receive, right? That scares the shit out of you. Now, there's the risk avoidant, and then there's the risk tolerant. And people who are, there's actually another word for it, and I'm slipping it right now. B, do you remember it? Risk tolerant, risk avoidant. Anyways, the opposite side aversion, someone who like avoids taking risks, is someone who's actually really highly tolerant of risk. So for example, they're the person that would turn up the shower and be okay because they'd be able to manage and monitor their brain saying, step out of the way, we're getting burned here. Or when it's really, really cold, they might feel and be able to regulate their own experience, their own emotions, how they perceive the pain in this instance as too cold, right? So I'm one of those persons who I have a high risk tolerance because, and I'm just talking physical in this manner, right? I can turn the shower all the way on and literally to other people, it would feel like scalding, or I could get freezing cold in a bathtub and numb because I have a mentally high risk tolerance. I take high risks. My investment portfolio is high risk because I understand the compound effect of the long-term effect. So bringing this back down to who you are as a person, just think about your day-to-day. Are you taking high risks, or are you staying kind of even cool, right? And why I bring that concept up, B, thank you for asking me to define that, is because when you recognize that you have a team culture that's very low risk, very risk averse, meaning in their day-to-day life, it's a little scary to step outside of their comfort zone, right? Their culture really takes a lot of safety and has a lot of certainty in the box, in the frame of what their culture has predetermined for them. They're not trying to pave new runways for their legacy. They're not trying to change and evolve their culture. When you have a low tolerance to risk, one of the biggest cons, that's just, I want to say, a big alert to those of you who do want to have momentum, who do want to fail forward, who do want to see truly the pros of what clarity around your team culture can have. And to circle this all the way back to your experience with the team, it was obvious to me that where our team's risk level is in some capacities versus others, because there was that long pause. And then there was chaos, like you said, which was everyone sharing their experiences. That was socially very risky for each one of the team, but they did that, which indicates to me as a leader that we are creating those spaces where they feel psychologically safe to express who they are, what they value in their experiences, which that is a huge pro to providing that space and getting clear on your team's culture.
So I have 2 questions for you then. Number 1, where do you believe that risk aversion comes from? So why do you believe that certain people develop certain types of tolerances? Or, well, let's specifically talk about aversions. And then number 2, Okay, so for the people out there who are like, okay, I get it. Like, I need to make sure that I'm tolerant, that I'm listening, that I'm doing all of these things within my culture, within my family, within my business, my teams, whatever.
Mhm.
How would you guide people to start doing these things? How can people actually make sure that, like we're doing, they're building a culture where everyone can be celebrated for their neurodiversity or be heard for their specific understandings in the way that we did with Evolve?
This questioning is going to be really helpful. So great question. Okay. So as you were asking that, my brain was starting to fire. And to start that, I'll start with this is getting clear on what your values are will help you understand how you're going to get clear on your team's culture and their values. And so to answer your first question, where does this start? Where does this start? Where does your risk tolerance, your risk, it's called risk capacity, really. Where does this start? And how is it formed? How is it shaped? How does this carry into your team, right? So if you were to think of like a little kid, how do they go from baby risk capacity as a toddler to adult, or let's not just skip a couple steps, going to like T-ball. I'm thinking about like T-ball right now and their
T-ball.
risk capacity, or like ballet, right? Or even just reading in class, to then, high school raising their hands and giving a presentation, to then, graduation or whatnot, or starting a business or whatever, getting involved in different activities, athletics, clubs, etc., to then growing to be an adult and taking social risks like getting into a relationship and, investment strategies and developing teams, being a leader, going up, getting promoted, all that jazz. And then how does that come full circle to when they have kids, right? And how they affect it. So let's get very down to bare bones and to keep it kind of high level. Your risk capacity is oftentimes modeled just like everything else. Our brains just, and I won't get too nerdy on this, but our brains are already biologically, neurologically programmed to stay within a certain risk threshold that our caregivers have modeled is ideal for us. So what does all of that transcode to? When you have mom and dad, or mom and mom, dad and dad, or grandma and grandpa, whomever, as your caretakers, as you're a little baby, you watch their behavior in and out. You can't help it. That's what you're programmed to do. So when grandpa gets in the car, let's just say, hypothetically speaking, and he doesn't put his seatbelt on, you're observing that behavior as a little kid. And so your brain is calculating, okay, well, unless there's any consequences with this, that's okay behavior. That's medium threshold. My risk capacity is bigger. When you start to get into cars with, let's say, for example, some of your friends, and your friend's mom is driving you to soccer practice as a youngin', and then all of a sudden she says, buckle up, and she puts on her seatbelt, and your friend whom you're sitting next to puts on their seatbelt, and you look around and you're like, I always get in the car with grandpa, and that's not a behavior we do. Your brain starts to kind of understand and get curious of like, why are they doing something different? But because you're in likely the car of your friend's mom and you want to appease, socially be accepted, right? That's what we're programmed to do. You put on your seatbelt, and then you start to contemplate behind the scenes as a youngin', why are these behaviors different? So at a young age, we start to observe the behavior that we're up around, or that we're growing up in, AKA your culture. So you immediately, your brain is recognizing that grandpa might have a different culture or risk capacity just getting in the car than my friend's culture. And that's all based off of their experiences, their belief system. Maybe grandpa had a belief that because he grew up without seatbelts, if you were to put on your seatbelt, that would actually increase your risk of getting killed if the car were to flip over. So his belief system is now being modeled. And you as a child, even though there's been lots of research to show how important seatbelts are and how much they actually do save lives in vehicular accidents, your belief system is now modeled because grandpa was your biggest caregiver. You wanted the most love from him, right? You spent the most time observing his behavior. It was those car rides with your friends that were one-offs that you started to really see like, okay, well, I'm actually a little bit less, I don't know, seasoned in that arena. You start there, but then it grows, it expands base. So how does that start to kind of fall into like the rest of the kid's life? Like when it comes to when you have a high risk tolerance or you have more of a risk appetite, so like that's a risky quote unquote behavior, we could categorize that as children or people who are more have a higher appetite for risk. They'll likely engage in more risky behaviors. So like, for example, they might skateboard on really high hills or something like that. They might walk down the train tracks and think that, you know, it's not a big deal because they have a belief built in that they'll be okay because they've gotten in the car a ton of times, not putting on their seatbelt and still survive. So the brain starts to develop these if-then scenarios. If I don't put on my seatbelt and I don't get in a car accident, and I got home safely, then I don't need it. So these beliefs develop over time to where more and more behaviors pushing the threshold of like, well, can I experiment here and get away with it behaviorally? And through that, it is proven over time that those beliefs start to expand, if you will, like a ripple effect into a pond where risky other quote unquote behavior engages. And it doesn't have to be negative things, right? It doesn't have to be things that put you in danger. However, those people who are risk averse are quite opposite. They won't try things. They won't try new behaviors. They won't test their own limits. And thus they'll likely stay small. And what I found is that there's a direct correlation too with different cultures when there is low risk appetite, meaning there's high risk aversion. They try to avoid risk. They don't try things, so they never prove to themselves that they're capable.
So I'm going to transcode a little bit and basically explain what I heard. There's two things that Emilia just mentioned, and we've talked about them both on the show. Number one is the concept of social learning theory, which I've talked about extensively. Social learning theory is that we learn and adopt behaviors and beliefs and ideas and frameworks about the world and our understanding from the people around us, especially from the youngest age, from our caregivers. The second component, which I don't know if you realize you were talking about this, attachment theory. Attachment theory. So for those of you who have never heard of attachment theory, it's a concept that comes out of psychology and specifically like child development, which talks about the types of relationships and the quality of the relationship that we had with our caregiver. So there's 3 or 4, I think there's 4. There's 4 types of attachment styles. The first one is a secure attachment. And the secure attachment is basically the best one that you can have, right? It means that mom, dad, aunt, uncle, whoever was raising you, you were able to form a healthy and secure bond with them. And it was a safe bond. So if you feel safe as a child, you are going to be more likely to go explore because you know mom, dad, whoever is right there. And I can go back there if something happens. I can look to them and I will get safety. The next one is an anxious attachment. This stems from instability. There wasn't a lot of safety. There wasn't a lot of security. And there wasn't always certainty as to whether you were going to get love or be whether there was going to be stability in that connection. And so these are people who end up like serial daters. They're super anxious, they're shy, they're scared growing up because they never were given that safety to explore. They never knew whether they were going to get love or not growing up. And so they kind of had to learn how to do these weird things in order to get love or safety or whatever. So if you're uncertain about whether you're going to be safe or get protection or get love, you're not going to go explore. You're not going to go try new things. You are going to have a low risk tolerance because your primary need of safety, security, stability is not being met. Now, on the flip side of that is avoidant attached. These are the people who grow up very similarly to anxious attachment, but there is probably abuse in there, whether mental, emotional, psychological, sexual, whatever. There is some sort of abuse that basically teaches them, I'm not going to get love here. And in fact, I need to go away and I need to protect myself. I need to stay away. So these people end up being avoidant. These are the people who like, they struggle in relationships. They struggle opening up. They struggle trusting people because they're not certain that they are going to be safe and they've learned to protect themselves by themselves. So, and then the fourth one is like a mix of the second and third.
Yeah. Secure, anxious, dismissive, and fearful. That's
how
we categorize.
Yeah. So again, now how does this all tie into culture? This goes into my second question that Emilia was just about to answer. But from this framework, you have all of these people, again, whether it's an intimate relationship, whether it's a friendship, whether you're building a family, whether it's literally whatever, any type of relationship, your team. Emilia and I talk about our family and our friends as our key players, right? So the key players in your life, the team members in your life, we are all coming in with our own understanding of the world, our own constructs, our own culture, our own understandings of the world, and our own attachment style, having learned all of these different things. So we're all coming into this space with these different cultures, these different understandings, these different ways of being and doing things, and our own sense of safety, whether it's on the one end where we feel completely secure and we're willing to take risk and willing to do all of these things, or it's the opposite, where you're not going to do anything because you need to know with 100% certainty that you are going to be safe. Now, Em, this goes into my second question that I was asking you. How do you build a team, a relationship, a community where that culture, all of those different cultures can collaborate as one and feel safe and have that connection? And how does that tie into the pros and cons? Again, going back to like the title of the episode.
What's funny is I like never thought of this until the question. But a lot of it comes down to working on attachment styles and evolving those attachment styles. I never really thought about it in the clinical, like I took psychology and child adolescent and development psychology was one of my favorite courses that I took in college while I was studying in my undergrad. And I literally am realizing now a lot of team culture and getting clear on it to be able to reap the pros and I don't want to say avoid the cons, but kind of
mitigate the cons.
Yeah. Mitigate at least the downsides of those is evolving the attachment styles of different cultures and understanding where those actually butt heads that don't help you perpetuate momentum that serves the overall mission. Because a lack of clarity can actually cause, what we do call the rumbling, which is kind of butting heads. And in a way that might feel, to your point, Bianca, in the moment, like a loss, like the con, but in the long term, it actually creates so much. So how do you go about doing that? Yes, at the high level, it's evolving those attachment styles, but to start very basic, you got to understand how at the very basic fundamental biggest human need starts on a neurological level, that we all want to belong.
Yeah.
And so if you're getting people in a room or working towards a shared vision, a shared purpose, a shared values, anything, a goal, like you got to understand each one of us want to be heard, seen, and valued for who we are or who we think we are, right? And we don't want to trigger those parts of us that have so much pain and ego underneath that. And when we do, to your point, what you had mentioned, we have to create a safe or psychologically assuming safe place where when you can be imperfect, the ramifications aren't going to cut you from this social frame. Because our biggest fear from our brain when it comes to a culture, like cultures combining and colliding, is that we won't be able to see each other's vantage point and have a sense of connection there. It's like, I will be ostracized from the social community if I speak my truth. And the biggest fundamental thing to be able to start that and start to do what we've done. And I will say, I will be the first person to say we are not perfect at this at all. But I know there's so much intentionality that we do behind the scenes to make sure that our team is like thriving in the capacity where like every single aspect, like they are truly thriving and evolving at a capacity that they literally never thought at one point was possible, given their own attachment styles, given their old ways of thinking, their beliefs, their values and whatnot. And has some of that stay the same? Absolutely. Has it evolved 1000%? And they keep evolving. And so to round this out and to really tie it back to our listeners who might be curious about, okay, well, the pros and cons, like, let's really get clear on that. It's number one, the getting, focusing on the fact that when I said the momentum thing, let that be so important to you that the long-term matters so much, where you have to perform in the day-to-day to create that psychologically safe space for your team to know that they won't be judged for their imperfections. When you can provide that space, which literally can start as a item on your calendar that says, let's rumble, or rumble lab, which is something that we started to do with our team every month so that we can understand where they're coming from and not assume. Putting that time on the calendar to be so humble to know that you're not perfect. I'm not perfect. This is where I'm coming from. This is where you're coming from. That doesn't mean we need to compare in order to see if we're going to cut you from this social framework. It's more so, let's see each other's vantage point so that we can extract the glory in between. Starting there is literally, it sounds like such a small step, but it is the biggest challenge for a lot of teams. They don't want to do that. They don't want to stay humble, to what you had said. They don't want to rumble. They don't want to get near those touchy-feely things that there's so much relational and generational trauma around. And looking at it from a strictly neurological perspective, understanding, the emotional part that we just want to belong. We just want to be heard. We just want to be seen. That is a lot easier said than done. Thoughts?
That was beautifully said.
So high level, to wrap this out, a couple pros that we mentioned, and B, let me know if I missed any, but a couple pros of getting clear on your team's culture is developing the humility in each one of ourselves to understand who we are, where we come from, and where we can go together, right? Getting clear on that can help cultivate number two, which is a sense of belonging, right? And in a better future than that which would have existed if you guys didn't have those uncomfortable dialogues and if you didn't provide that conversation. And number three is what happens as a result of number one and number two is action. action creates momentum, which creates a path forward, and it can look messy. It should look messy. Messiness is a great indicator that you're moving forward. If you're staying perfect, if you're not moving forward, that momentum is being blocked, and therefore a greater vision of the future is not being built by those unique souls that you have access to and that are willing to share their hearts with you, right?
Yeah.
Cons, if you're getting clear on your team's culture and it's not necessarily done so in such an intentional and conscious way as what we're talking about, that can really create a lot of isolation in your team, which is the opposite of belonging, right? Feeling a sense of loneliness. When you do it really unintentionally and you're not aware of your emotional triggers and what are those scenarios where that could come up, it can create negative comparisons, which can actually lead your team to a sense of self worthlessness and a lower sense of belief in themselves, which I would hate to see any team member experience. And that's where those constant feedback loops, having time on the calendar, can really help provide that opportunity to get clearer on your team's culture. Clarity is not going to come like that. It's certainly not going to come in a perfectly packaged with a ribbon on top for you, though a lot of companies wish that were the case. Comes in that leadership that you're talking about.
Yeah. I think another few cons that we talked about is just the amount of time and effort that it takes. Like, it is not easy when you take a group of people with massively different backgrounds and you're trying to collaborate on a shared mission. It is so hard. And it's so like, it really is. And it would be so much easier to just say, you know what, me and Emilia, we're the leaders and we're doing it this way. And you guys can get off the team if you don't like it. It would be it genuinely would be so much easier to do that because we would just get things done the way that we wanted to. And that would be it.
Right.
No one would ever join our mission. And in all honesty, nor should they, if that's the approach that we decided to take.
It'd be the revolving door that so many companies are challenged with in terms of like, what are the biggest costs that companies experience? It's turnover.
Yeah.
You know, when you factor everything in, and we did a podcast about this, like just billions of dollars is spent on like literally trying to like get people to come to your company, when in all reality, it's like, be the change that you wish to see in the world. And I truly believe if you can commit to that day in and day out, even and especially when you're triggered, like that is what will create a solid team. And it will help them create teams in their lives too, which is the ripple effect that you want.
Yeah.
Well, if this one took it out of me.
Yeah. Yeah. This was great though. Yeah. Beyond grateful for this. We hope this was helpful for all of you. We hope that we were able to give you some insights that you hadn't thought about before. Follow us on social media at Evolve Ventures. If you want more in-depth conversations like these, reach out to Emilia and I. Out of the Mud is the last Friday of every single month. We are going to be diving into topics like this. This month is all about culture, so we're going to be diving deeper into this specific topic as well. So if you want more tips, tools, how-tos, and all of that on how to do all of this within your life, make sure you sign up for Out of the Mud. It's in my bio, Emilia's bio, the Evolve Ventures bio. We love you all. We are grateful for each and every one of you who listens to this show every single week. And we celebrate all of you, especially this month for Pride Month and just the entire theme of culture.
Heck yeah. I'll close this out with an episode suggestion that I have, which is 65 has my definition of fun changed. And I want to say that just because I had it on my Remarkable. This is a great way to understand and try to figure out one of the biggest challenges that I see companies struggle with is like, how do we do a team event? Like, let's do something fun. And then I ask like CEOs and like SVPs and like, so what is your definition of fun? And they go and tell me all about it. And then I'm like, okay, would that definition be the same with every single team member? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, that's the issue right there. We all come from very unique perspectives. What looks fun to you might not look the same in terms of fun to your other team members. So that being said, I'm so excited to continuously learn about our teams and share with each one of our listeners the journey that we have and some of the lessons learned. And I'm really grateful for each one of you, like Bianca said, for joining us on this journey and allowing us to be a part of yours.
And my episode suggestion is number 62, relationships and how they shape you.
Ooh. Alrighty, you feel complete?
I feel good. I'm ready to wrap this up.
All right. Enjoy and stay tuned for our next episode. And please do share this with someone that you love and care about. Let's get the conversation going. One of my favorite text messages that I receive or DMs is like a screenshot of like family group text messages that have been started or friend group messages that have been like kicked off as a result of these conversations that we have. So share this with someone you love and care about, and who knows what could come on the other end of that.
Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.